These are my Studio Hermit Ed's 3 temptations that got me over the years, okay? I've been doing this a long time, and these are the 3 temptations that were my biggest problem. They may not be yours, but they're going to be mine. Now, we're not going to get into substance abuse because that was never a major thing for me. I'm a teetotaler, so that's never been a temptation for me. These 3 are doozies, and number 3 is really juicy. It's probably the one most of you are thinking of. But we're going to start with temptation number 1, and that temptation is arrogance. The temptation to think you're better than you really are, especially in the studio. When you're recording music and the adrenaline's going and you think you've got it down pat, you picked all the right mics, you got the best drum sound in the world, you know that adrenaline's going, this is the greatest song, or this is the greatest mix I ever made. Every day it's the greatest mix I ever made. I'm sure you've said that because we've all said that. It's a temptation to be arrogant. And of course the cure for it is humble pie. Now for me in the studio, I found my humble pie always came. I'll open up a drawer. I have a lot of vinyl. I have a lot of vinyl albums from the 70s and even the 80s. And I'll listen to the Charlie Daniels Band, or I'll listen to the Eagles. Okay, I could go Air Supply I have in there. These are the greats. You listen to one of those albums, and if you think your mix stands up to that, or the band that you just recorded, hey, you're doing something, pat yourself on the back. I've never accomplished that. I'll be the first to admit that. Not in my studio, but it's easy when the adrenaline's going, and in a live show, you know, after it's over, when the adrenaline's there, you think you did the greatest show. That was the best show we ever played, man, you know. Then the next day, of course, reality kicks in. Or your wife, if she happens to be there, or your significant other, and they say, man, you really messed this up, and you're like, oh yeah. But humble pie is the cure for arrogance. And right when I make a mix, I think it's the greatest mix I ever did, especially when I listen to it in headphones. I think this is the greatest mix and then I put it in the car. I'm like, humble pie, that's the cure. Now that brings us to my temptation. Now these are my temptations, okay? Number 2. Number 2, I'm sorry to admit, I am a gear slut. Now, those of you who own studios know exactly what that means. And I yielded to temptation. Oh, Father, forgive me, I yielded to temptation. If I had invested the money that I did in music in gold as I went along, yeah, I wouldn't be working full-time job, trust me. I would be a very wealthy man, and my wife would be happier. But I probably wouldn't be happier, though, because I wouldn't have all this stuff. And that matters to me. So my happiness is important, too, right? All these guitars and all this gear. But back behind me here, you see a Strat guitar. That was one of the last American-made Strats in 1979, I believe. I bought that guitar in 1979. It might be a 78. Bought it at New York Music in Youngstown, Ohio. I'll never forget the day I brought that baby home right there. And I paid $700 and some for it. And of course now, that was a good investment, by the way. Not as good as gold, but pretty good. I think it's worth a couple $1,000. So hey, I should have bought more Strat guitars instead of the electronics is where you lose money. Anything, tape decks, reel-to-reels, ADAT machines, DAT machines, you name it, they've been through here, okay? Mixing boards, analog, Tascam mixing boards, Mackie mixing boards, I mean big ones, 32 by 8s. When Behringer first came out, I bought one of them, had it for a week and took it back. Yeah, that's the way Behringer used to be. it kind of sounded okay. It was different, but oh well, we're not going to get into that. But gear, what else have I gone through? Amplifiers and guitars, playing out loud, live, you go through a lot of amplification. Lights for light shows. You name it, I've spent so much money on gear, and I am guilty. And that's my second temptation. As a studio owner and playing out live also when I was younger, wow, a lot of money on gear. That's the second big temptation. The best thing I can tell you how to remedy it. Here's what I did. Unless you're a full-time musician or full-time studio and you've got a lot of clients, maybe you live in the inner city, you got to borrow some money, keep your studio afloat. That's business. I'm talking hobby musician like myself, okay? So my role was I never spent my daytime job money in here. Only like I would go and I would lay ceramic floor at night or put in hardwood floors or build a shed for somebody on the weekend. I was a construction worker, by the way. I owned my own construction company, but I always kept the money from here separate. I only spent the money from here was the extras. You know what I'm saying? I would mow grass, whatever I could do to make a couple $100 to buy my next piece of gear. And only cash. I borrowed. Okay? Now I'm talking hobbies here. If your studio is your hobby, even if you've got big dreams, if you're not making money, don't borrow money. For goodness sake, especially in this day and age, bands don't need studios anymore. So my advice to you, if you own a studio, unless you're making big money, it's okay to invest that money back, but don't spend a lot of your hard-earned. You will not be able to be in a relationship. No one will have you if you're spending every penny on your studio. So, but that's our sin number 2. Now, we had number 1, arrogance, and I told you how I got over that by listening to great mixes. Number 2 is the gear, and I told you I'm not over that. I yield to that temptation to this day. I still want to buy stuff. So even when you're an old man, I'm 64, and I have not gotten over that temptation, okay? I'm not 64 yet, a couple months. Then that brings us to number 3, and this is the doozy. This is the one that will ruin your life, literally, if you let it. As a musician and a studio owner, number 3 temptation, you're going to want to stick around for this. Okay, that brings us to number 3 temptation. It's the one you're all thinking, okay, I happen to be a heterosexual male, so keep that in context. I like females, okay? Now, that's the temptation. And especially when you're on the road as a musician, when you're playing gigs, and I'll tell you something, when I was playing a lot of gigs, I started out in Christian music. We played a lot of church music, okay? Contemporary Christian. I have a video on that. But it was actually worse than playing in bars, secular music and fairs and whatever. Okay, but there's something about it. You know, you could take just a little dinky, ugly guy like me. I mean, I ain't no looker. I never was, you know. And I'm only 5'8". But you strap a guitar on, and the girls, I don't have to tell you. There's just something about it. It takes us from a 4 to a 9 real quick. Oh, yeah. And it happens. And my uncle, he used to say, what was his saying? I got to clean this up a little bit, okay? But if a woman wants it, no red-blooded man's going to say no. that was. I had to say no a lot. Now I have been married, believe it or not, for 43 years, and as God is my witness, okay, with my right hand up, I have it's It's not my strength. It's God help me and whatever. I don't know. But I never have. Now, you're looking at me and you say, this dude was never. Yeah, that's proposition, believe it or not. Like I said, put a guitar on you and those numbers go up real quick. But live, it was bad. It was bad. After shows, there were nights. When you're exhausted after a show. Okay, you get up on stage. If any of you have done it, you know what I mean. But you play a show for like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. In bars, you're doing usually three sets, and we never did more than three. 45 minutes. There were hour sets, breaks in between, and but I'll tell you something. You're so tired afterwards. It's a little easier to say no to these temptations. Okay, but now in the recording studio, females come in here. They'll bring backing tracks. Sometimes I make them. And I've been alone with females in here. And I've been propositioned. But every time I said no. You know what? I had the same answer every time almost. I would say at the time, my mother-in-law lived with us. And my 2 daughters and my wife. And I used to say, I have 4 women up at the house I can't afford. I sure can't afford another one. And that was my reason for saying no. So there's my way out of that temptation. Now this is one I never yielded to. You know, if you have, I know my old man, he yielded, but we're not going to get into that. He was a preacher and he yielded, but I never did. I think I was too tired. I had so much going on. You know, I was working construction all week, building homes. And then by the time it came to playing shows, I was into the music so much that I was able to say no. But this will ruin your life, okay? I mean, if I would have just said yes once, I would not have this recording studio. I wouldn't have anything. These guitars you see behind you, they wouldn't exist. I'd have lost it all. Because my wife's smarter than I am, okay? She's a pretty good business person. She's the only reason why I have anything. And that was a lot of the reason too, you know. She lets me buy all this stuff. Seriously, I wouldn't have anything if it wasn't for my wife. So, I have stayed faithful. If you haven't, you know, I feel bad for you. All I can say is I feel bad for you. So that's my third temptation. Yeah, even us little short ugly guys, you know, a lot of musicians fall into this category. You know what I'm talking about, right? But yeah, I never yielded. I'm so thankful I didn't, you know, and I still got to keep all my stuff. But this is Studio Hermit Ed, and that's my 3 big temptations. If you got different ones, be sure and comment below. And if you have yielded, maybe you don't want to admit it, but if you do, we'll all get a chuckle. Yeah, hey, you know, none of us are perfect. Trust me, I'm not perfect. Like I said, number 2 gets me really bad. But I haven't yielded. Hey, this is Studio Hermit Ed. Make sure and subscribe and hit the like button if you haven't already, and because it makes the old guy feel better, you know. And I'll talk to you later. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.